Hello everyone and welcome back. I'm going to be doing another modding tutorial. This time we're going to be covering how to create simple blocks and some things that you can do with them. So in order to create a new block, this is something I think I've mentioned before, we need to extend either the vanilla block class or a class that extends that as well. And let me see if I can remember where you find that. You go to Minecraft, reference libraries, forge source, and then you could find all the Minecraft classes and stuff. Net.minecraft.block is the package you want, and we can see there's a lot of different block classes in this game. And I don't know if this is something I mentioned yet or not, but one thing that you want to do often in modding is if you don't know how to do something, think, is there something in vanilla that does something very similar to what I'm wanting to do? And if you could think of something that does something very similar, then take a look at the code for that block or item or whatever it is, and it may give you some ideas of how to handle it. So today I want to cover making an ore block that can be smelted into an ingot. The ingot we will get to in the next episode. For today we're just doing the ore. And there is an ore class, and honestly I've never extended this particular class myself. I always just go straight from a custom block class of mine that extends block, but we're not going to be doing a class quite like that. That's a bit more complicated than I want to get into for a tutorial. But take a look at the block ore class and see what you could learn from it. There are a few interesting methods here. Get item dropped will determine what item is actually dropped when you mine the ore. So for example, if you mine a coal ore block, you typically get coal if you're not using silk touch. If you mine diamond, then you get a diamond, and so on. And this method controls what exactly drops when the block is mined. Quantity dropped will affect how many items the block will drop. So you could see in this function, it's basically saying if it's lapis ore, it's going to do 4 plus some random number between 0 and 4 inclusive. Otherwise, it's just going to drop 1 by default. Another interesting method here is get experience drop. This determines how much experience the player gets from mining this particular ore. That is, assuming of course it's an ore that drops an item, not the actual ore itself, which is what we're going to be doing in this case. And damage dropped will affect the meta value or damage value of the item being dropped. So you can see here for lapis ore, it's returning 4 because lapis is a dye with damage value of 4. So those are a couple of methods to keep in mind. So let's go ahead and get out of the Minecraft class and create our own little block class. So I will also create a package for blocks and block related things. And you could call the class whatever you want. Let's say that this is what's a metal you don't see too often? We'll call it mithril ore. So if we followed the vanilla naming convention, that'd be block mithril ore. I tend to leave out the block a lot myself, but I'm going to insert it in there in this case. So I'm going to extend from block directly. Okay, so we've got our new block class. It extends block. So let's go ahead and add a constructor. So normally the block constructor takes one parameter, a material, that tells the block what it's made out of. And it's one of the main ways to determine what tool harvested. We don't necessarily need to pass in a material here since our block is only going to have one material. We could just specify right here as well. And typically the material for ores is rock. Alright, what are some other things we can do? Well, we could set the hardness of the block. which affects how long it takes to mine. Typically for ores, this is 3.0. Next, we could set the blast resistance of the block. For ores, I believe this is typically 15. Now, we could also set the sound that plays when a player walks on this. And let's just go for sound type stone. Alright, and we also need to set the harvest level of this block. So we could do that with set harvest level, and we want this to be mined with a pickaxe. And what mining level do we want? In vanilla Minecraft, wooden pickaxes are mining level 0, stone is mining level 1, iron is mining level 2, and diamond is mining level 3. So why don't we set it we need at least an iron pickaxe, so mining level 2. Okay, what else might we need to add? Okay, we need to set a texture for this block. And this is where the resource prefix from earlier is going to come in handy. So we're going to do set block texture name. And let's see, it was tutorial mod dot resource prefix. And that is the, well, it's not showing me the value. It's our mod ID followed by a colon. And onto that, we're going to add... Alright, well, we need to add something to our names class from before. We need to add the unlocalized name for this new ore. So we will call that public static final mithril ore. Okay, and let's just call it mithril ore like that. I normally do the names like this. I'm not sure what you'd call that with each word capitalized. You could do it any way you want. Minecraft would do it like this, with all lowercase with an underscore. I kind of prefer to do it like this. It doesn't really matter, just, again, try to be consistent. And why do you not like... Oh, right. Public final static string. Don't know why I'm having so much trouble with that. But the nice thing about using an IDE is it tells you when you make mistakes. Okay, so you could input the name of your texture directly here, like this, but it's kind of bad practice to do that, so we're going to say names.mithril ore. Now we'll be able to use the same name in other places, and we will need this in at least one other place. Okay, so before we get it into overriding the methods that will define how this block behaves, there are two more methods that I want to add, and this is something that I like to do. Other people might do this a different way, but I'm going to have two functions here. One will be called add recipes, and the other will be called add or dictionary, or something like that. And all of my blocks and items have functions by these names, and I actually put them in an interface to make so that I can automate calling these functions, but I'm not going to do that here because it's a little bit too complicated for a tutorial. But I like having the recipes in the block or item class just to keep them spaced out, because recipe code is a bit dense at times. It's not the funny stuff to look at, so having it all amassed together in one class can be a bit overwhelming, so I add it in the block and item classes. I also do the ore dictionary names here. So we could go ahead and, well, we can't do a recipe yet because we would need an ingot. But I can't go ahead and add the ore dictionary in. So if we want our ore to be compatible with other mods, which I assume you would, we're going to need to register it in the ore dictionary. So the way we do that is we use the ore dictionary class, and we call register ore. And typically what you do is pass in the ore dictionary name, and this is camel case, and typically starts with ore, ingot, gem, something like that. You can look up a list of common ore dictionary names on the internet. So typically for ores we have ore, lowercase, and then the name of the ore with the first letter capitalized like that. So ore mithril. And after this you can pass in, I believe, a block, an item, or an item stack. In this case, we could just use the block itself, since we don't have any sub-blocks. So I'm just using this to point to the block itself. Okay, and we need to organize our imports. And now our ore is registered in the ore dictionary. So if there's a mod that has processing for mithril ore, then it will be able to use the ores from this mod. Okay, so this block class might need a little bit more work, but before we do anything else, let's go ahead and add it into the game and see what it does. So I'm going to create another new class called mod blocks. This is where we're going to be registering all of our blocks, and this doesn't have to extend anything in particular. And I'm going to make a public static void method called init. And we will call this method inside of our main mod class. So let's go ahead and put that in before we forget. So we want to do it in pre-init. That's where we want to register our blocks and items. So modblocks.init. And there we go. That's all we need to change here. I think I forgot to save this file. Yeah, that was the problem. Oh, and you'll notice I did add a bunch of comments to this file. So again, if you're not understanding something or you need more information, go check out this mod on GitHub. There is a link in the video description, and you can view all the comments that I write after I make the episode. Okay, so registering our blocks is fairly simple, I think. So we're also going to use the modblocks class to store a reference to our blocks. So we will call this public static, and it was block mithril ore, I believe, yes. And just call that mithril ore. Don't assign that a value just yet, and in the init method, we're going to say mithril ore is assigned a value of new block mithril ore. Okay, so now we also have to register our block. So to do that, we're going to use the game registry, and we are going to call register block, and here we're going to use the block that we just created and use that names constant that we created earlier for the texture name as well. And you could also, are there other versions of that register block? I can't remember. Yes, you could also specify a custom item block if you need to. But for now, that's not necessary. Okay, so this should have our new ore registered in the game. It won't be spawning in the world, of course. And it probably won't have a texture because I haven't made one. Actually, let me create a texture really quickly for this. Okay, so this is paint.net. This is a very good free image editing program. It doesn't have a lot of features to it built in, although you can get plugins for it. I like it because it loads up super fast. There's practically no waiting. You just type in paint.net and it's good to go. So I'm going to create a new image, and let's see, default Minecraft textures are 16 by 16. And we could create a new texture from scratch here. Let me actually open up an existing texture instead. That'd be a much better way to go about this. Alright, here's the vanilla gold ore texture. So we could just recolor the yellowish parts of this texture to easily create a new one. And how do you select? Oh, hold Control? No? Yes? Okay, it's a little bit funny trying to select single pixels with this. Okay, there we go. So I've got all the golden bits of this texture selected. So I could go ahead and just paste that into a new layer if I want to make it a bit easier to work with. And now we can just recolor this. Go to Hue and Saturation, and what should our mithril texture be? Some kind of blue? Something like that. Maybe a little bit more like that. There we go. And of course you can make whatever other modifications you want to this. Okay, so where do we save this? We're going to want to go into the folder we created for our mod. Then into Resources. Now in here we want to create a folder called Assets. And in here we need another new folder with our mod ID in all lowercase. Make sure that's all lowercase or it won't work if I remember correctly. I think that was a big stumbling block that a lot of people hit when they were updating to 1.7. Okay, and in here, let's go ahead and create a few folders. We're going to need lang for localization files and textures. Now inside the texture folders, create blocks and items, and we want to save this in blocks. And of course, make sure you save it as a PNG file. And I'm going to name that mithril ore. Same thing that's in the names file. It could be anything, really, but I like to keep it the same as the name of the block. That just makes things so much nicer. Alright, so let's actually try starting this up. Okay, so let's see. Let's try typing in tutorial, and oh, what do you know? It's actually got the texture. I wasn't sure if it would or not. Well, we've got our mithril ore, although it doesn't have a name, but we can place it. And let's see. Let's get an iron pickaxe as well. And already in survival mode, so let's see. Stone pickaxe, that doesn't look like it's going to work. Yeah, that didn't work. Iron pickaxe, we can mine it. And of course with a level 4 mining pickaxe, that's no problem either. Okay, so how can we fix the name? Because this should not be tile.null.name. How do we fix it? Alright, I believe I've got it here. So all you have to do to fix that issue is put in this.setBlockName, names.mithril ore. And I should mention you don't need the this. You just leave that out and have it like this, but it's a bit better to have the this in there just to make sure that you know what you're doing. So setBlockName will fix that, and that will make it, see, what was it, tile.tutorialmod:mithril ore. Alright, so I guess that brings us to adding the actual localization. So let's go into resources, and in assets.tutorialmod.lang we're going to do, see, how do you create a plain text file? Just file. Okay, and we're going to call that en underscore capital U capital S dot lang. I think that's right. And this is our American English localization file. And let me just really quickly pull up another one for reference. Okay, here's our Super Multi-Drills localization file, and I believe I showed this earlier, but if you click and hold one of the tabs, just click and drag, you can actually put that into different configurations where you can display multiple files at once. I kind of like doing it like this so that they're side by side, but you can also do it so that they're like this, top and bottom. Let's go ahead and put them like that. Okay, so we added a creative tab before, and all lines that begin with the pound sign or whatever you call it are just comments, and I just put those in there to group things. So what do we call that? It's been a while since I recorded the previous episodes. We called it tab tutorial mod. Okay. Okay, and we can just put in whatever we want there. Okay, and now we've got block localizations. So our mithril ore should be tile dot tutorial mod mithril ore, and we're going to say dot name is equal to, and then whatever the localized name for this language is. In this case, it's just mithril ore. So in most cases, it'll be pretty much the same as this, but with spaces in it. Okay, so that should be all we need to do there. Let me test it again, and I did remove a bunch of the excess mods, so I've just got NEI, Wayla, Code Chicken Core. Nothing else. Okay, we apparently didn't do something quite right here. Okay, well, I see what's wrong. So what I did incorrectly here is I need to put in the resource prefix. And there's actually a reason that I made a mistake here. I have a method where, let me rephrase that. I have it set up so that I have the block name set automatically in all of my mods. So I normally don't have to touch that method. There are some ways that you can automate setting the block texture name, the block name, things like that. Okay, so let's try this again. Will you be fixed this time? Not quite. What did I do wrong? Ah, right. This has to be lowercase. My mistake. Okay, and unfortunately you do have to reload Minecraft for that. There are some things that when you change them while you're debugging, it will actually change in-game without you having to restart. If it's something like the value that a function returns, or something like that, I don't know if the values of constants count. But for sure, if you change the contents of a function that isn't called just once, it will change in-game without you having to restart it. The code gets hot swapped. But if you add in something new or change something that's just loaded up once, it won't fix it. But we finally fixed our localization, so it says mithril ore now instead of some random looking garbage that would scare most people. And there we go, basic ore. It doesn't do anything yet. We'll need to get to adding items. But I just realized there's one more thing I forgot to do. We need to go back into mod blocks, and we need to call mithril ore dot add recipes, and we need to call the add ore dictionary recipes as well, or add ore dictionary entries as well. And once we actually add some recipes in this function, that should add it, and our ore should be registered in the ore dictionary now, although I don't know any way to check that for sure with the mods I have installed. So I think that's about it for this episode. Next episode we'll add an ingot to go with our ore, and in here we will add a smelting recipe to make that ingot. And if we have plenty of time, we could even add a nugget and a block to go with that ingot. And I'll show you how to do crafting recipes to get between nugget, ingot, and block. So as always, if you're liking what you're seeing, and I just realized that's wrong, don't forget you can leave a like on the video if you want to, and subscribe if you haven't already so you can keep up. And I will see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching.